attention to a very, very important story that seems to have slipped off the headlines and off the top news for some strange reason. COVID is very much out there. It is very much a problem, and in India, the cases are rising. They are going on rising, and this is very much a concern. So here is the latest. We have crossed over 42 lakh cases in total. So we have the second highest number of cases in the world. We were at number 3. Brazil was at number 2, but we have topped them. The United States is now the only country at number 1 above us. I want to make clear that when I say 42 lakh cases, I'm talking about the total number of people who have had COVID-19 in India so far. This includes a large number of people who have recovered, and a smaller number relatively, of course, have unfortunately passed away, and the number of active cases are relatively less. We understand that. That is sort of the important part to know when you see that overall figure. But the concerns are other parameters. The concerns are that in the last 6 or 7 days, the number of daily cases have been jumping up dramatically in India. We are close to 1 lakh new cases per day now, and that is a real problem. The number of deaths per day also needs to level out at some point, but it is increasing. There are now talks that we may already well be into our second wave. There is one case of reinfection that has emerged in Bengaluru, and that is causing concern as well. So today, I want to ask that, have we sort of begun to take COVID for granted? Have we gotten into a chalta hai attitude? Because you go out, you see people are not really wearing masks when they should. Social distancing is just something you say to each other. And we've learned to live with it. I want to go across now to my panel. Dr. Ramanan Laxminarayan is joining us, Director of the Center for Disease Dynamics, Economic and Policy, and Dr. Shashank Joshi. He's a top Mumbai doctor who's member of the COVID Task Force in Maharashtra. Welcome to both of you. Dr. Joshi, I want to start with you because Maharashtra has the most numbers. Mumbai is still, in a bit of a precarious situation. Have people, when they say they're living with COVID, become immune to the idea that it could impact them as well? Or has it become an attitude of, acha, jo hoga dekha jayega? Is that what we're seeing right now? Because there is no respite.
You are absolutely right. We need to call our citizens at large for a citizens pledge and get them involved that COVID is very much here, and we need to get them to behave appropriately. We need COVID appropriate behavior, and we are not seeing that. And that's why we are seeing a sudden slippage as we unlock in Mission Unlock 4, a large number of cases coming across the country. It is very, very imperative that people don't give up their sanitization, masking, and social distancing. It is absolutely mandatory. COVID is very much here. It has not gone away anywhere. Though we may have the best recovery rate, we might have a very low case fatality rate. We cannot do away without a COVID appropriate behavior, and we need to engage our citizens at large to cooperate and empower them so that they can be empowered rather than enforcing them. I think there is a limit to which our agencies can work, our governmental agencies can work. It is time for them not to get fed up, not to become complacent, not to become reckless or irresponsible. In fact, behave responsibly as we unlock, because some amount of cases can be anticipated. But this type of surge, and because of festivities and other things, we need to be clearly COVID appropriate. And I think that lackadaisical attitude needs to have a wake-up call. I hope this is a wake-up call, and I appeal to each and every person who is listening to this program that please ensure that we protect ourselves, our own family members, our own near and dear ones, and our own citizens. And if we mask, we are protecting not only ourselves, but people around us. And that's so crucial and critical and vital so that we can then conquer COVID. Otherwise, we are nowhere
Ramanan,
near those numbers. Yeah.
Yes. Sure, but Dr. Ramanan, I want your perspective as well, because you look at the data. We've gone from 68,000 odd cases daily on August 31st to about 91,000 by September 6th. So is this simply people, running amok and not caring anymore and saying whatever will be? Or is this also now because of reverse migration taking place, further unlock, Like, what is your reading?
So keep in mind that this 4.2 million is reported cases. This is not the true rate of infections. The true numbers of infections are vastly beyond this. This is just infections that have been detected through testing. Now, somewhere in about 45 days ago, the country moved to testing with the rapid antigen test a lot more than using the RT-PCR. The difference is that this rapid antigen test is not as sensitive. It's not as accurate. So it misses a lot of people who are COVID positive. And even though you're supposed to do an RT-PCR, if you don't have a positive in this rapid antigen test, many people don't do it. So there was a period when people thought that the curve had been flattened, when all that was happening was we were switching over to another testing method where the positivity rate was going to come down quite a bit. Now, having stabilized at that lower benchmark, the cases are climbing up from there again. I don't think there is a second wave. I don't think there's necessarily a change. I certainly do agree that this fourth phase of lockdown is bringing about, people coming outside, engaging with other people. A lot is irresponsible, but a lot is inevitable. If you want people to go to work, they're going to be on, some sort of transportation vehicle with someone else, even if it's not public transportation. So this is a natural phase of opening up the economy. It was always to be expected because this is the reason we had the lockdown in the first place. To actually encourage the masking and the social distancing. And let me just stop by saying that it's a fine balance, to be honest, because it is a balance between not sending the population into panic, but at the same time getting them to respect the virus and take it seriously. And I don't think we've achieved that balance very well.
Dr. Joshi, you are in the midst of this policy making and public policy. My honest concern is that many people talk about it, but implementability is really not there. You talk about our top politicians. They are without masks when they need to be. People are not seeing that kind of strict adherence to what is being preached to them. Number one. Number two, do you think that we are sort of falling behind on the basis of contact tracing? Because if now such a large number of people are mingling to this extent, how are you going to go around contact tracing?
So let me look at a positive aspect of all this. I completely agree with you that you practice what you preach and we need to be strict. And COVID doesn't distinguish rich or poor or upper class, lower class or middle class. In fact, if you see the pandemic today in Mumbai, it's all in the high rises and in the well-off community. So obviously somewhere when you lapse, it's going to take care of you. I agree with my co-speaker and colleague who very rightly said that we have not been able to strike the right balance. And there is no need to panic or fear, but at the same time, there is no need to be reckless and inappropriate and irresponsible. We need to strike it right. And if you strike it right, it is good. Some amount of immunity already has crept in because we have actually had a large exposure to the virus. A lot of people already have got asymptomatic disease. 80% of people get asymptomatic disease. Now, there is a finite limit to which you can do contact tracing. I completely agree with you that for every one positive detected case, minimum 50 to 30 people should be contact traced. And of course, the testing, tracing, and isolating policy must be adhered to strictly. Unfortunately, somewhere down the line, we also need our citizens to gain their confidence back and cooperate. I think that also needs a lot of community sensitization. And I think people with this, COVID fatigue has set in after 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
And people just have wanting to get out now because they're just feeling locked in. And that's why, what you said is very right. Ki COVID hoga to hoga, hum dekh lenge. That type of attitude should be restrained. We need to draw that Lakshman Rekha. That Lakshman Rekha drawing is very tough. And that's why I'm appealing that if
I was actually having a conversation with someone. Yes.
If you want to really draw that Lakshman Rekha,
but wear your mask. I was actually having a conversation with someone about how
don't go into a crowded place.
Yes.
You can be a little more common sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No, I wanted to get a word in from Dr. Ramanan, and I was just saying, I was having this conversation with someone that we tend to be a very fatalistic society. We believe, in getting what you deserve. We believe in fate, and that perhaps has shaped our approach, but that's, of course, another discussion altogether. What I want to ask you, Dr. Ramanan, is how are other nations striking this balance? Of course, not all of them have populations as large as ours or as densely packed, but they are opening up much more. Here we are seeing this spike in the last 7-8 days.
Yeah. So first of all, let me correct a misperception. It is not true that we have a lower mortality rate than other countries. If you look across the world, India is about 83rd on the mortality ranking. It's about 87th on the case ranking. And we're amongst the lowest on the testing ranking. So there are many countries with higher case fatality rates. There are many countries with lower case fatality rates. So we're just about the international average. So I don't think there's anything exceptional here. We just have, we're doing about as well as everyone else is. But the problems that we're facing are also not exceptional. The same issues are being faced in the US. People don't want to wear masks. They don't want to socially distance. The same issue is in Germany. It's in other places. They have the advantage that they have the space to socially distance, that people actually are not living right next to each other. They don't have the population density. But I think this urge and this desire to be done with COVID is actually is a global phenomenon, regardless of which country you look at. And I don't think India is particularly, I don't think Indians are being fatalistic necessarily here. I think they just want to get back to normal life, and I can totally understand that, because for any single person, the risk of dying is extremely small, right? It's a very, very small probability, and they look at that and say, "Chalo, I'll take that risk and go forward with it."
Yeah. Well, remember that in the wider statistics, it might seem very small, but you don't want to be stuck in that quagmire, and you don't want to be someone who's spreading it. This is unfortunately not something you can just wish away and be done with. We need to keep on it. In fact, we're going to have focused coverage on the spike in COVID cases this week on the India Development Debate. But for now, I want to thank both my speakers on this very important subject and take a very short break. When we come back, we're talking about another topic which really impacts you. We all celebrate the lowering of interest rates, but what happens to the fixed deposit which so many Indians depend on? The good old fixed deposit is really beginning to hurt savers. What is the reason? What are the options? Come back for our deep dive when we return.